Welcome to Dreamweaver Tales. Get comfortable, close your eyes, and let my voice guide you into a world of peaceful dreams. You know, there's something magical about those moments just before a tropical storm arrives in the jungle. The air itself seems to hold its breath, and if you've ever found yourself in such a place during these precious minutes, you'll understand what I mean. Tonight, I'd like to take you there with me, to a small clearing deep within an ancient rainforest, where the canopy stretches so high above that, even in daylight, only scattered patches of sky peek through the emerald ceiling. The evening light is fading now. That gentle transition from day to night that happens so quickly near the equator. One moment the jungle glows with amber warmth, and the next, deep purple shadows begin their slow dance between the massive tree trunks. You can feel it in the temperature first, that subtle shift where the air stops feeling quite so heavy against your skin, where each breath doesn't require quite the same effort it did an hour ago. The sounds of the jungle are beginning their nightly transformation too. The daytime chorus of parrots and howler monkeys gradually gives way to softer voices. The gentle cooing of night birds settling into their roosts. The distant call of a toucan somewhere far above in the canopy. There's a rustling in the understory as small creatures make their way to evening shelter, leaves brushing against leaves in a whispered symphony that seems to match the slowing rhythm of your own heartbeat. Standing here in this clearing, perhaps 30 feet across, you notice how the ground beneath your feet feels different now. The earth, rich and dark from countless seasons of fallen leaves, has a slight springiness to it, as if it's alive and breathing along with everything else. Patches of moss create natural cushions against the bases of the great trees that ring this open space. Their surface is so soft they seem to invite you to sit and simply observe what's about to unfold. Above, the first signs of change are becoming visible through the breaks in the canopy. The sky, which just moments ago held the deep blue-purple of early evening, now shows wisps of darker clouds beginning to gather. These aren't the harsh, angry clouds of a severe thunderstorm, but rather the full, rolling formations that promise a gentle, soaking rain. They move with a kind of majesty, these cloud masses, drifting across the small patches of visible sky like enormous ships sailing a celestial ocean. The air pressure is shifting now, and you can feel it in subtle ways throughout your body. There's a lightness, almost an anticipation, as if the very atmosphere is preparing for something wonderful. Your ears might pop slightly, the way they do when you're ascending in an airplane, and somehow this small sensation adds to the feeling that you're about to witness something extraordinary. The temperature continues its gradual descent, and now there's the faintest hint of moisture beginning to gather on your skin. Not quite humidity, not yet the first droplets of rain, but something in between, as if the air itself is becoming more substantial, more present. When you breathe in, you can taste this moisture, clean and fresh, carrying with it the promise of the downpour to come. The jungle around you seems to be responding to these atmospheric changes in its own quiet way. Leaves that hung still and heavy in the day's heat now stir with the slightest movement, catching what little breeze manages to filter down through the layers of vegetation above. It's fascinating to watch. These enormous ferns and broad-leafed plants beginning to shift and sway in slow motion, as if they're stretching after a long day's rest. From somewhere in the distance comes a new sound, the deep, resonant call of a howler monkey, but softer now, more contemplative than the territorial declarations of daylight hours. The sound echoes strangely in the thick air, seeming to bounce between the tree trunks and fade into the growing darkness in a way that makes it impossible to determine exactly where it originated. Other creatures are beginning to add their voices to this evening chorus. The chirp of tree frogs, still tentative, and the soft chittering of night insects beginning to emerge. The light continues to fade, and now the clearing takes on an almost ethereal quality. What little illumination filters down through the canopy seems to have a weight to it, creating pockets of silvery visibility between deeper shadows. The massive tree trunks that surround this space, some so wide that several people holding hands couldn't encircle them, appear and disappear into the growing darkness like ancient guardians keeping watch over this peaceful sanctuary. You become aware of a new scent beginning to permeate the air. It's the smell of approaching rain, that distinctive clean aroma that seems to awaken something primal in your memory. But here in the jungle, this familiar scent is layered with other fragrances. The rich, earthy smell of decomposing vegetation, the green freshness of living plants, and underneath it all, something floral and sweet, perhaps from night-blooming jasmine, hidden somewhere in the understory. The moisture in the air is becoming more noticeable now. When you run your hand along your arm, your skin feels cool and slightly damp, as if you've been lightly misted. This isn't uncomfortable, quite the opposite. There's something deeply soothing about this gradual increase in humidity, as if the air itself is becoming more nurturing, more embracing. Looking up through the gaps in the canopy, you can see that the clouds are building more substantially now. What began as wispy formations have grown into proper cloud masses, their edges still soft and rounded, but their centers growing darker and more substantial. Occasionally, a faint flicker of lightning illuminates these formations from within, not the sharp, jagged bolts of severe weather, but rather a gentle glow that spreads through the cloud mass, like a soft lamp being turned on and off in a distant room. The jungle's response to these atmospheric changes is becoming more pronounced. Night birds are calling more frequently now, their voices creating a tapestry of sound that seems to rise and fall with the shifting air pressure. Somewhere nearby, you hear the gentle splash of water, perhaps a small stream, or the dripping from an earlier rain shower, finally making its way down through the many layers of leaves above. The air movement is increasing slightly, not quite a breeze, but a subtle stirring that carries scents and sounds from different parts of the jungle. One moment you catch the earthy smell of wet soil. The next, a hint of something fruity from overripe mangoes or papayas fallen somewhere in the darkness. These olfactory waves seem to roll through the clearing in gentle succession, each one adding another layer to your sensory experience of this magical evening, your body is beginning to adjust to these changing conditions in its own quiet way. The slight cooling of the air makes your muscles feel more relaxed, less tense than they might have been in the heat of the day. The increasing humidity seems to soften your breathing, making each inhalation and exhalation feel more effortless, more natural. The sounds of the approaching storm are still distant, but growing more distinct. There's a low rumbling, so subtle you might wonder if you're actually hearing it, or just feeling it as a vibration through the ground beneath your feet. This thunder, if that's what it is, doesn't have the sharp crack of storms in drier climates. Instead, it rolls and echoes, muffled and softened by the dense vegetation, creating a sound that's more like a gentle drum being played somewhere far away. The quality of darkness in the jungle is unlike anywhere else. Even as night falls more completely, the clearing doesn't become pitch black. Instead, there's a kind of layered darkness with different depths of shadow creating a subtle visual texture. Your eyes begin to adjust, and you start to make out details that weren't visible before. The intricate patterns of bark on nearby trees, the delicate silhouettes of ferns against slightly lighter backgrounds, the occasional glint of moisture on a broad leaf. The air pressure continues to drop, and with it comes a sense of anticipation that seems to permeate everything around you. The jungle itself appears to be waiting, holding its breath for the first drops of rain. Even the sounds seem more hushed now, as if all the creatures of the forest are pausing to listen for that initial patter of water on leaves. When you breathe deeply, the air feels different in your lungs, cooler, more substantial, carrying with it all those layered scents and the promise of the storm to come. There's something deeply calming about this gradual buildup, this slow accumulation of atmospheric pressure and moisture that signals the approaching rain. Unlike sudden weather changes that can feel jarring or unsettling, this transformation feels natural, peaceful, like watching a flower slowly open or the sun gradually set. The lightning flickers again, more frequently now, though still distant and gentle. These illuminations reveal glimpses of the cloud formations above, massive and stately, moving with the dignity of ancient mountains drifting across the sky. In these brief moments of increased visibility, you catch sight of movement in the upper reaches of the canopy, perhaps a sloth making its slow way to better shelter, or night birds adjusting their positions in preparation for the rain. The temperature has dropped enough now that the air feels genuinely cool against your skin, a welcome relief that makes you want to breathe more deeply, to fill your lungs with this refreshing atmosphere. There's something almost medicinal about air like this, so clean and moisture-laden that each breath feels like it's washing away the accumulated tension and fatigue of ordinary life. As you stand in this clearing, surrounded by the enormous presence of the ancient trees and enveloped in the gathering storm's embrace, time seems to slow and stretch. Minutes pass like hours, but in the most peaceful way imaginable. There's nowhere else you need to be, nothing else you need to do except simply exist in this moment breathing this extraordinary air and feeling yourself becoming part of the jungle's quiet preparation for the rain that's surely coming. The first drops are still minutes away, but already you can sense their approach in every breath, every gentle rumble of distant thunder, every subtle shift in the air around you. This is the magic of the moments before a tropical rain. This slow, sweet anticipation that wraps around you like the most comfortable blanket imaginable. And then, as you settle deeper into this state of quiet expectation, you hear it, the softest whisper against a broad leaf, somewhere high above your head. Just one drop, a single, perfect sphere of water that has finally released its hold on the heavy cloud and made its gentle descent through the layers of the jungle canopy. The sound it makes when it touches that leaf is barely audible, like the quietest fingertip tapping against silk. But in this hushed cathedral of green, even the smallest sounds carry meaning. You tilt your head slightly, listening with every fiber of your being for that next drop. The jungle seems to be holding its breath alongside you, waiting. A night bird calls once, a liquid questioning note that seems to ask if the rain has truly begun. And then, there it is again, another drop, this one landing on a different leaf, perhaps 20 feet to your left. The sound is slightly different this time, a softer plip instead of that initial whispered tap, as if each leaf has its own unique voice, waiting to sing with the rain. The air around you grows even more saturated, if such a thing were possible. You can feel the moisture beginning to condense on your skin now. Not yet from the falling drops, but from the sheer abundance of water suspended in the atmosphere. Your arms feel kissed by the gentlest dew, and when you run your tongue across your lips, you taste that pure, clean flavor of approaching rain. It's remarkable how your body becomes a sensor in these moments, detecting changes in humidity and pressure with an accuracy that surprises you. Every pore seems open and aware, reading the night air like pages in a book written by the sky. The spacing between drops begins to shift now, becoming just slightly more frequent. Not yet a rhythm exactly, but the beginnings of one. Drop. Pause. Drop. Pause. Drop. Each one landing somewhere different in the vast green world around you. Some strike leaves with that soft percussion you've come to recognize, while others seem to disappear entirely, perhaps caught by flowers or absorbed immediately by the thick moss that carpets so many of the tree trunks. You wonder about those silent drops, the ones that make no sound but are still there, still part of this gathering symphony. A coolness begins to emanate from the earth beneath your feet. The jungle floor, that rich carpet of decomposing leaves and organic matter, seems to be awakening to the promise of water. You can smell it now, that distinctive earthy perfume that rises when dry ground prepares to receive rain. It's deeper and more complex than you might expect, layered with notes of vanilla from orchid roots, the green brightness of crushed ferns, and something darker, more mysterious, the ancient smell of soil that has been building itself for centuries. You notice how the quality of darkness around you has begun to change as well. While the night is still deep and encompassing, there's something different about the shadows now. They seem softer somehow, less defined. Perhaps it's the moisture in the air creating a gentle diffusion. Or maybe it's the way your eyes have adjusted even further to the low light. The massive tree trunks around you appear less like solid barriers and more like gentle guardians, their bark surfaces seeming to breathe with the humid air. Another drop finds you directly, landing on your shoulder with a coolness that spreads outward from the point of contact, like ripples on a still pond. The sensation is exquisite, not cold enough to startle, but refreshingly cool against your skin that has been warmed by the tropical air. You resist the urge to brush it away, instead letting it sit there, a perfect globe of pure water that carries within it the entire story of its journey from cloud to canopy to you. The drops are coming more regularly now, though still sparse enough that you can distinguish each individual arrival. Plip, tap, a soft rustle as one lands on a cluster of broad leaves and causes them to whisper against each other. The jungle is beginning its conversation with the rain, and you are here to witness these opening exchanges. It strikes you how different this is from rain in other places. There's no harsh drumming on rooftops, no rushing along gutters, no splashing on concrete. Here, everything is soft reception, gentle absorption, quiet welcome. You become aware of how the various levels of the jungle are experiencing these first drops differently. High above, in the emergent canopy where the tallest trees reach toward the clouds, the drops are meeting their first obstacle, the broad, waxy leaves that crown the forest. Some drops cling there, gathering size and weight before continuing their descent. Others are caught in the dense middle canopy, that thick layer of branches and vines and epiphytes that creates such intricate networks of catching and channeling. And then there are the drops that make it all the way down to where you are, in the quieter understory, having been filtered and gentled by their passage through all those layers of green. The temperature around you continues its subtle shift. While still warm, the air carries now that particular coolness that comes only from evaporation and the presence of falling water. Your body recognizes this change instinctively, and you feel yourself relaxing even more deeply into this moment. There's something primal about this response to rain, something that connects you to countless generations of humans who have found shelter and peace in the sound of water returning to earth. A drop lands on your forehead, right at your hairline, and begins its own tiny journey down your temple. The sensation is incredibly soothing, like the gentlest possible massage. A single point of coolness tracing the contours of your face. You close your eyes and focus on this simple, perfect feeling. Such a small thing, one drop of water, yet it contains within it the entire water cycle of the planet. It has been vapor, cloud, and now liquid again, connecting you to the vast circulation of water that encompasses the globe. The fragrance rising from the jungle floor grows more pronounced with each passing moment. That petrichor, the distinctive smell of rain on earth, takes on new dimensions here in the tropical forest. It's richer, more complex than you've ever experienced. There are notes you can identify: the sweetness of flowering vines, the sharp green scent of moss releasing its moisture to the air, the deeper earthiness of roots and decomposition. But there are other elements too, mysterious and exotic. The perfume of night-blooming flowers you cannot name, the subtle musk of sleeping animals, the clean ozone smell that comes with electrical activity in the atmosphere. You notice how your breathing has naturally adjusted to match this environment. Your breaths have become deeper, slower, more appreciative. Each inhalation brings you more information about this remarkable ecosystem, awakening to rain. Your exhales seem to meld with the humid air around you, making you feel less like an observer and more like a participant in this nightly ritual. The boundary between your body and the air around it feels increasingly fluid, as if you are slowly becoming part of the jungle's respiratory system. The intervals between drops continue to shorten, though the rain is still far from what anyone would call steady. It's more like nature's version of a slow, meditative countdown. Drop by drop, the sky is emptying itself into the waiting embrace of the forest. Some drops seem larger now, making slightly more pronounced sounds when they connect with leaves or bark. Others remain almost impossibly delicate, more like condensed mist than actual droplets. You shift your weight slightly and become aware of how even this small movement creates ripples in your awareness of the surrounding environment. Your body has become so attuned to the subtle changes happening around you that every sense feels heightened, more receptive. The soft ground beneath your feet seems to pulse gently with its own rhythm, as if the earth itself has a heartbeat that you're only now learning to detect. Another drop finds you, this one landing on the back of your hand. You watch as it sits there for just a moment, a perfect sphere catching what little light filters down through the canopy before it spreads and is absorbed by your skin. The water feels incredibly pure, cleaner than anything you've ever experienced. It carries no trace of pollution or processing, just the essential cleanness of water that has been purified by its journey through the sky and filtered by its passage through countless leaves. This pure rain carries something else with it too, the collected essence of every leaf it has touched. You can almost taste the green vitality in the air, that fresh, oxygen-rich flavor that only comes from being surrounded by living, breathing vegetation. Each droplet has borrowed something from the massive cecropia leaves above, the delicate fern fronds, the waxy surfaces of bromeliads, creating a natural elixir that seems to cleanse not just your skin, but something deeper within you. You tilt your face upward slightly, letting more of these gentle drops find you. Some catch in your eyelashes, creating tiny prisms that fracture the dim forest light into minute rainbows. Others trace cool paths down your temples, following the natural contours of your face before disappearing into the collar of your shirt. The sensation is neither warm nor cold, but perfectly neutral, as if the rain has adopted the exact temperature of your body during its descent through the layered atmosphere of the jungle. As you stand there receiving this natural blessing, your awareness begins to expand upward, following the path the raindrops have taken. High above you, the forest canopies stretch like a vast living cathedral. The trees here are ancient beyond measure. Some of these giants have been reaching toward the sky for centuries. Their trunks so massive that it would take a dozen people holding hands to encircle them. Their roots, extend even deeper than their crowns reach high, creating an underground network that mirrors the interwoven branches above. The canopy exists in layers, each one a complete world unto itself. Far above, the emergent giants push their crowns above everything else, catching the first drops of rain and the last rays of sunlight. Below them, the main canopy forms a continuous green ceiling, so thick and complete that it filters out most of the daylight, even during the brightest hours. Here in this middle story, epiphytes, the air plants that live without ever touching the ground, create hanging gardens on every available branch and trunk. You can sense the incredible diversity of life happening in the darkness above you. Night-blooming orchids are slowly opening their petals, releasing fragrances designed to attract nocturnal pollinators. Somewhere up there, a sloth moves with prehistoric slowness along a highway of interconnected branches, its movement so deliberate and quiet that it barely disturbs the leaves. Tree frogs with skin so translucent you could see their tiny hearts beating navigate between pools of rainwater collected in the curves of bromeliad leaves. Each plant a miniature aquatic ecosystem, complete with its own food chain. The rain is becoming more purposeful now, transitioning from those first scattered drops to a proper shower. You can hear it engaging with the forest in stages, first striking the highest leaves with a sound like gentle applause, then filtering down through layer after layer of vegetation. Each level adds its own percussion to the symphony. The broad leaves of the understory plants receive the water with deep, hollow notes, while the smaller ferns and mosses accept it with barely a whisper. You notice that the air itself seems to be changing as the rain intensifies. The humidity, already thick and present, becomes somehow more alive, more charged with potential. You can feel it entering your lungs differently now, not just as moisture, but as something that carries the very breath of the forest. The countless plants around you are responding to the rain by opening their stomata, those microscopic pores that allow them to exchange gases with the atmosphere. In effect, the entire jungle is beginning to breathe more deeply, and you find yourself naturally falling into rhythm with this grand respiratory cycle. With each breath, you draw in air that has been processed by thousands of leaves, enriched with oxygen and infused with the subtle aromatic compounds that plants use to communicate with each other and their environment. Scientists call these volatile organic compounds, but here in the darkness, surrounded by their source, they feel more like messages, chemical whispers that carry information about the health of the forest, the presence of rain, the turning of seasons in a place where seasonal change is measured not in temperature but in the rhythm of wet and dry, the subtle shifts in which flowers bloom and which fruits ripen. The sound of the rain is becoming more complex now, creating a natural soundscape that seems to have been composed specifically for this moment. There's the primary rhythm of water striking leaves, thousands of tiny impacts happening simultaneously but never quite in unison, creating a texture rather than a beat. Layered beneath this is the sound of water moving, rivulets beginning to form and flow along branches, gathering momentum as they follow the natural channels carved by countless previous storms. You can hear the rain beginning to reach the forest floor around you, though most of it takes several minutes to complete the journey from canopy to ground. Some drops fall freely through the rare gaps in the vegetation above, arriving with the same speed they would in an open field. But most of the water takes a more leisurely route, pausing on leaf after leaf, growing larger as it combines with other droplets, sometimes stopping entirely to rest in the curved base of a leaf before continuing its descent. This creates a fascinating temporal dimension to the rainfall. The storm happening in the canopy above you is actually arriving at ground level in stages, like an echo with substance. A gust of wind that passed through the treetops several minutes ago is only now delivering its collected moisture to where you stand. The rain you're feeling on your skin left the clouds perhaps half an hour ago, and has been on a leisurely journey through one of the most complex three-dimensional ecosystems on Earth. As you become more attuned to these subtleties, you start to distinguish between different types of drops. The ones that have fallen freely are smaller, cooler, and strike your skin with a light, quick impact. The ones that have gathered and grown during their journey through the canopy are larger, warmer from their contact with sun-heated leaves, and carry more of that green essence you noticed earlier. Some drops are so large that you can actually track their individual descent, seeing them form on a leaf just barely visible in the darkness above, watching them grow heavy enough to overcome the surface tension holding them, and following their path as they fall toward you. The forest around you is responding to the rain in ways both obvious and subtle. You can hear the immediate response, the grateful acceptance of water by leaves that have been waiting since the last shower. But there are deeper changes happening too, processes that will unfold over hours and days. Seeds that have been lying dormant in the soil are beginning to absorb moisture, triggering the ancient genetic programs that will lead to germination. Root systems throughout the forest are preparing to take advantage of the water that will soon reach them, some of it having traveled not just down from the canopy, but laterally along branches and trunk surfaces, following the natural architecture of the trees. The rain brings news too. Its chemical composition tells the story of where it has been, perhaps over the ocean where it gathered salt spray, across agricultural lands where it collected traces of earth and growing crops, through industrial areas where it acquired different molecular signatures. But by the time it reaches you here, filtered through the elaborate natural purification system of the canopy, it has been cleansed of most foreign elements, returning to something approaching its essential nature. You realize that you are witnessing one of the planet's great recycling systems in action. The water falling on you has been here before. Some of it may have last fallen on this very spot months or years ago, before beginning its journey through streams and rivers to the sea, then up into the atmosphere through evaporation, then back inland as clouds, and finally down again through the canopy to complete another cycle. You are part of this cycle too. Your body, mostly water that has its own complex history of where it has been and what it has been part of. The canopy above you is not just passively receiving and filtering the rain. It is actively participating in the hydrological cycle. During the day, when the sun penetrates the upper layers of leaves, these same trees that are now catching rainfall will be releasing water vapor through transpiration, contributing to the formation of the clouds that will bring future storms. The forest creates its own weather to some extent, moderating temperature and humidity, generating the conditions that sustain the incredible diversity of life it supports. Standing here in the gentle embrace of this rain-soaked jungle, you feel yourself becoming part of something much larger than your individual self. The boundaries between where you end and the forest begins seem less distinct in the darkness and moisture. The water running down your arms could just as easily be running down the smooth bark of a nearby tree. The breath you exhale joins the exhalations of countless plants and animals, becoming part of the atmosphere that nourishes everything in this ecosystem. This integration feels completely natural, not mystical or abstract, but as real and practical as the rain itself. You are, after all, made of the same elements as everything around you: carbon and hydrogen and oxygen and nitrogen, minerals that have cycled through rocks and soil and living beings for millions of years. Here in the rainforest, surrounded by the most concentrated expression of life on the planet, this fundamental interconnectedness becomes not just intellectually obvious, but viscerally felt. This understanding settles into your bones as you continue your gentle exploration deeper into the heart of the rainforest, where the very landscape begins to transform around the flowing arteries of water that give this chapter its name. The ground beneath your feet starts to change, becoming softer and more yielding as you approach what was once a dry creek bed, now awakening under the patient ministrations of the rain. What began as a whisper of moisture trickling between stones has grown into something more substantial, not yet a rushing torrent, but a purposeful gathering of water that speaks of the forest's ancient wisdom in channeling and directing the gift from above. The sound reaches you first, a liquid murmur that harmonizes perfectly with the rain's percussion on the canopy overhead. It's the sound of water finding its way, following paths carved by countless seasons of rain before this one. Channels and depressions that hold the memory of every storm in their gentle curves. As you draw closer, you can see how the rain has begun to collect and flow, creating temporary rivers that will exist only for tonight, born of this particular storm and destined to fade back into the earth when the rain finally moves on. The creek bed reveals itself in the dim forest light as a highway of smooth stones and rich, dark earth, polished by the passage of water through countless rainy seasons. Tonight, it's coming alive again under your feet. The stones, so recently dry and dusty, now gleam with a film of clean water that reflects what little light filters down through the layers of leaves above. Each step you take sends tiny ripples across these shallow pools, creating expanding circles that catch and scatter the faint luminescence of the night. You pause at the edge of what is becoming a proper stream, perhaps 6 feet wide and growing, fed by a dozen smaller tributaries that snake down from the higher ground around you. The water moves with the unhurried confidence of something that knows exactly where it's going, carrying with it the stories of every leaf it has touched, every root it has nourished, every grain of soil it has awakened on its journey toward the larger waterways that will eventually carry it to the sea. The air here tastes different, charged with the negative ions that moving water releases, creating that distinctive freshness that makes you want to breathe more deeply. It's the same clean sharpness you might find near a waterfall, but gentler, more intimate. The humidity rises from the water's surface in invisible waves, carrying with it the concentrated essence of the forest floor, decomposing leaves and rich humus, the green smell of moss and ferns, the deeper earthiness of clay and ancient sediment. You find a comfortable spot on a fallen log that spans part way across the growing stream, its bark worn smooth by seasons of weather and now slick with tonight's rain. From here, you have a perfect vantage point to observe the choreography of water in motion. The stream flows around and over obstacles with a fluid intelligence, creating small eddies and gentle rapids where it encounters rocks, spreading wide and shallow where the bed opens up, narrowing and deepening where the banks draw close together. In the growing stream, you can see entire ecosystems springing to life. Water striders appear as if from nowhere, their legs dimpling the surface tension as they dance across pools that didn't exist an hour ago. Small fish, perhaps carried down from higher streams or emerging from deep pools that survive the dry season, dart through the deeper sections like living shadows. The rain continues to feed the waterway, each drop adding to its volume and velocity, transforming it from a trickle to a proper woodland brook before your eyes. The sound is hypnotically complex now, a symphony of different voices as the water encounters different surfaces and obstacles. There's the gentle lapping against the banks, the soft gurgle where the stream curves around a larger stone, the crystalline tinkle where it spills over a small ledge, the deeper murmur where it flows through a narrow channel between two boulders. Underlying it all is the steady rhythm of raindrops hitting the water's surface, adding their own percussive counterpoint to the liquid music. You lean forward slightly, drawn to observe more closely how the water interacts with the forest around it. Along the banks, plants that have been waiting for this moment begin to respond almost immediately. You can actually see some of the broad-leafed species lifting their foliage as if stretching after a long sleep. The ferns that grow in the moister areas seem to glow with renewed vitality, their fronds unfurling and spreading to catch more of the life-giving moisture. The stream carries more than just water. It's a conveyor belt for the forest's nutrients and seeds. You watch as small twigs and leaves float past, some riding the current all the way downstream, others catching on rocks or roots to form tiny temporary dams that redirect the flow in new directions. Occasionally, A larger piece of debris, perhaps a branch broken loose by the rain, comes floating by, riding the current with the dignity of a small ship navigating familiar waters. The temperature of the air near the water feels noticeably different, cooler and more stable than in other parts of the forest. Water has tremendous thermal mass, and even this temporary stream helps to moderate the air temperature around it, creating a microclimate that extends several feet from its banks. You can feel this cooling effect on your skin, a gentle relief from the warm humidity that characterizes most of the rainforest. As you sit quietly watching the water flow, you begin to notice the creatures that are drawn to this newly available resource. A group of small frogs emerges from the underbrush, their calls adding a rhythmic croaking to the soundscape. Their voices blend with the water's murmur and the rain's percussion to create a lullaby that seems specifically designed to ease human minds into deeper states of relaxation. These aren't the loud, assertive calls of territorial display, but the softer, more conversational sounds of creatures simply going about their business in their element. Night-flying insects begin to arrive as well, drawn by the humidity and the promise of water. They move in complex patterns above the stream's surface, their flight paths creating invisible calligraphy against the dark sky. Most are too small and quick for you to identify, but their presence adds another layer of activity to the scene. Another reminder that this temporary waterway has become an instant hub of life and activity. The rain continues its patient work overhead, and you can see how the stream responds to its fluctuations. When the rainfall intensifies, the water level rises perceptibly, and the current becomes more assertive. When the rain eases to a gentler patter, the stream settles back into a more contemplative pace. This responsiveness creates a living connection between the sky and the earth, with the water serving as a liquid telegraph, carrying messages between the two. You find yourself thinking about the journey this water will take, how these droplets that you're watching flow past your feet will eventually join larger streams, then rivers, then perhaps the ocean itself. Some of the water you see might evaporate tomorrow and return to the sky, beginning the cycle again. Some might sink into the ground to feed the vast network of roots that supports the forest canopy. Some might remain in temporary pools that will provide habitat for countless small creatures until the next dry season returns. This perspective, seeing yourself as part of water's great circulation, brings a profound sense of connection and continuity. The water in your own body participates in this same eternal cycle, and in a very real sense, you are witnessing your own future and past as you watch the stream flow by. The boundaries between observer and observed, between self and environment, become beautifully meaningless in the face of such fundamental interconnection. The stream has grown noticeably since you first arrived at its banks, and you can see that it will continue to grow throughout the night as the rain persists. What started as separate pools and trickles has become a unified waterway with its own personality and rhythm. The water moves with increasing confidence, carving slightly deeper channels, rearranging small stones, claiming its temporary territory with the ancient authority of water in motion. The sound has evolved too, becoming richer and more complex. As the stream gains volume and encounters new obstacles, you close your eyes and let the audio landscape wash over you. The primary melody of flowing water, supported by the percussion of raindrops, decorated with the calls of frogs and nightbirds, underscored by the vast whisper of rain on leaves throughout the forest canopy above. It's a composition that could never be replicated, existing only in this moment, in this place, under these particular conditions. When you open your eyes again, you notice how the moving water has become a pathway for reflected light, capturing and scattering the faint illumination that filters down through the forest in ways that still water never could. The gentle motion creates an ever-shifting pattern of highlights and shadows on the water's surface, a constantly changing light show that draws the eye and quiets the mind with its hypnotic beauty. This gentle ballet of light and shadow becomes the perfect backdrop for noticing the subtle changes happening throughout the jungle as the night deepens around you. The forest is never truly still, never completely silent, and as you rest beside the flowing water, you begin to become aware of the delicate stirrings of creatures who call the darkness their home. It's not a sudden awakening, but rather a gradual emergence, like watching the first stars appear in a twilight sky. One moment there's nothing, and the next, you realize you're surrounded by the quiet activity of nocturnal life. The first sound that draws your attention is so soft, you almost miss it entirely. A barely perceptible rustling in the canopy far above your head. It's different from the sound of leaves moving in the breeze, more purposeful, more deliberate. As you tilt your head upward, following the sound with your ears rather than your eyes in this dim light, you catch a glimpse of movement among the branches. A small shape moves with fluid grace from one tree to another, pausing occasionally before continuing its unhurried journey through the aerial highways of the forest. What strikes you most about these subtle sounds is their gentleness. There's nothing urgent or startling about the way these night dwellers move through their world. Instead, there's a quality of patience to their movements, as if they understand that the night belongs to them and there's no need to rush. A soft clicking sound drifts down from somewhere in the middle canopy, rhythmic and musical, like tiny wooden instruments being tapped together in a slow, improvised rhythm. You find yourself unconsciously synchronizing your breathing to match this gentle percussion, allowing it to guide you into an even deeper state of relaxation. The air around you carries new scents now, subtle changes that speak of the forest's transition into its nighttime personality. There's a sweetness that wasn't there during the day, perhaps from night-blooming flowers, opening their petals to attract the creatures who will help them complete their ancient dance of pollination. Mixed with this floral sweetness is something earthier, richer, the scent of soil and decomposing leaves where countless small creatures make their homes, turning the forest floor into a living, breathing foundation for everything that grows above. As your senses attune to these nocturnal stirrings, you become aware of how the creatures seem to move in layers through the forest. High above, in the very tops of the tallest trees, There are sounds so faint they might be mistaken for the whisper of wind through leaves. In the middle story of the forest, where thick branches create natural highways, the activity is more noticeable. Soft footfalls on bark, the gentle scratch of claws finding purchase on rough surfaces, the occasional soft call that seems more like a sigh than any deliberate communication. But it's the forest floor that holds the most subtle magic. Here, in the world of fallen logs and accumulated leaves, an entire universe of tiny creatures goes about the business of the night. You can hear them if you listen carefully. The almost inaudible patter of tiny feet, the soft rustling of something small moving through dry leaves, the faintest scraping sounds as creatures explore fallen branches and hidden crevices. It's like listening to the forest's own whispered secrets, shared only with those patient enough to remain still and quiet enough to hear. A new sound catches your attention, coming from somewhere near the water's edge, not far from where you rest. It's a soft splashing, but not the random splash of water moving over rocks. This has a rhythm to it, a purpose. As you listen more carefully, you realize you're hearing something drinking from the stream, taking its time, pausing between sips, as if savoring not just the water, but the peaceful moment itself. The sound is incredibly soothing, reminding you of how fundamental and life-giving water is to every creature in this forest ecosystem. The drinking continues for several minutes, unhurried and thorough, and you find something deeply calming about sharing this space with a creature who feels safe enough to take its time at the water's edge. There's a trust implicit in this moment, the animal's willingness to remain vulnerable while drinking, your own stillness that signals you pose no threat. It speaks to a deeper harmony that exists in nature when humans remember how to be quiet observers rather than intrusive visitors. As the drinking sounds fade away, replaced by the gentle footfalls of the creature moving back into the forest, you become aware of how the night air itself seems to be stirring with life. It's not just the movement of creatures you can hear, but something more subtle. The way the air currents carry different scents and sounds as nocturnal animals create their own weather patterns through the forest. A warm draft carries the green scent of growing things mixed with something musky and wild, while a cooler current brings the clean smell of flowing water and damp stone. These small atmospheric changes create an ever-shifting sensory environment that keeps your attention gently engaged without being overwhelming. Your skin registers the subtle temperature variations as different air currents move past you, some warm and humid from the heat, stored in sun-warmed leaves, others cool and fresh from the shadows where the forest floor stays moist and dark throughout the day. It's like being wrapped in layers of different textures, each one contributing to your overall sense of comfort and belonging in this wild place. The soundscape continues to evolve as well, with new voices joining the nocturnal chorus. There's a soft hooting sound, so low and mellow, it might be mistaken for wind moving through a hollow log. It comes at irregular intervals, each call lasting several seconds before fading into silence, creating pockets of expectation as you unconsciously listen for the next one. When it comes, there's something deeply satisfying about its rich, woody tone, as if the forest itself is sighing in contentment. From somewhere deeper in the jungle comes a different kind of sound altogether, a soft chittering that rises and falls in gentle waves. It's clearly a conversation of sorts, though in a language composed entirely of clicks, chirps, and soft whistles. The rhythm of this exchange is remarkably soothing, like listening to a gentle argument between old friends who know each other well enough to disagree without rancor. The sounds seem to move through the trees, as if the participants are traveling together while they talk, their voices growing closer and then more distant as they follow whatever path makes sense in their nocturnal world. All of these sounds blend together into something that's less like noise and more like a very soft, complex piece of music. Each voice maintains its own rhythm and tone, but they seem to complement each other rather than compete for attention. The result is a natural symphony that seems specifically designed to calm the human nervous system, to remind you that you're part of something much larger and older than your individual concerns and worries. As you lie there, listening to this gentle cacophony of night sounds, you begin to notice how your own body is responding to the activity around you. Your breathing has naturally slowed and deepened, matching the unhurried pace of the creatures moving through the forest. Your muscles have released tensions you didn't even realize you were carrying, allowing you to settle more completely into whatever natural cushion of moss and soft earth supports you in this peaceful place. The darkness around you no longer feels empty or intimidating. Instead, it feels full of gentle life, populated by creatures who have learned to navigate their world without the harsh illumination that humans depend on. There's wisdom in their patient movements, in their willingness to take time, in their ability to find everything they need, using senses that don't rely on sight. Listening to them move through their nightly routines, you're reminded of different ways of being in the world, different rhythms of activity that don't rush towards some distant goal, but instead find meaning and satisfaction in each moment of the journey. The water beside you continues its own quiet contribution to this nighttime symphony, and you notice how the sounds of flowing water seem to provide a steady foundation that allows all the other sounds to exist without conflict. It's as if the stream serves as a kind of natural conductor, keeping time for all the various voices of the night forest, ensuring that everything harmonizes rather than clashes in this peaceful darkness. This natural orchestration draws you deeper into the forest's embrace, where the path you've been following begins to widen into something altogether more spacious. The canopy above seems to open slightly, creating pockets where the rain finds different surfaces to play upon, broader leaves that catch and release water in slower, more deliberate drops, and clusters of aerial roots that transform the falling moisture into delicate cascades. You find yourself entering what feels like a natural cathedral, a circular clearing surrounded by massive tree trunks whose bases disappear into the shadows beyond your vision. These ancient giants stand like pillars, supporting an invisible dome of interwoven branches high overhead. The ground here is softer beneath your feet, cushioned by decades of fallen leaves that have composted into a rich, springy carpet that yields gently with each step. The earthy fragrance is deeper here, more complex. Hints of decomposing wood mixing with the fresh green scent of new growth and the clean mineral smell of rainwater pooling in natural basins formed by exposed tree roots. The rain's character changes in this sanctuary space. Instead of the consistent patter you've grown accustomed to, here it arrives in waves and whispers. Some drops fall directly from the canopy gaps above, creating small percussion points against the leaf litter. Others have traveled longer journeys, sliding down trunk channels and accumulating before releasing in gentle splashes into hidden pools. The sound becomes more varied, more musical, a composition with multiple movements playing simultaneously at different volumes and tempos. Moving toward the center of this clearing, you discover an arrangement that seems almost intentionally designed for rest and contemplation. Several fallen logs, weathered smooth by years of rain and wind, have settled into a natural semicircle around a depression in the earth where rainwater has collected into a small, mirror-like pool. The water's surface catches what little filtered light penetrates the canopy, creating subtle reflections that shimmer with each new raindrop's arrival. You settle onto one of these natural benches, feeling how the wood, despite being aged and softened, remains solid and supportive. The surface is neither too wet nor too dry. The rain has given it a slight dampness that feels refreshing rather than uncomfortable. Leaning back slightly, you can rest against another fallen trunk that has positioned itself at just the right angle, creating a backrest that seems custom-made for this moment of stillness. From this seated position, the forest reveals new layers of activity and presence. Your eye level now aligns with different strata of the understory vegetation. Broad-leaved plants create natural umbrellas at various heights, each one channeling rainwater in its own distinctive pattern. You watch as water collects along the edges of a particularly large leaf, building tension until it releases in a single, satisfying drop that lands with a soft plip in the pool before you. The pool itself becomes a source of gentle fascination. Its surface serves as a canvas where the rain creates temporary art, concentric circles that expand and intersect with one another, creating brief geometric patterns that dissolve and reform with each new drop. The water is dark enough that you can't see its bottom, giving it a sense of mysterious depth, yet clear enough that the ripples and reflections remain crisp and well-defined. Around the pool's edges, you notice how different plants have positioned themselves to take advantage of this natural water source. Small ferns unfurl their delicate fronds at the water's margin, their surfaces jeweled with tiny droplets that catch and hold the light. Moss has claimed sections of the surrounding rocks and root systems, creating patches of vibrant green that seem to glow with their own inner light in the forest dimness. The temperature in this sanctuary feels perfect. The rain's cooling effect, balanced by the warmth retained by the forest floor and the shelter provided by the surrounding trees. There's no wind here. The air moves only in gentle stirrings created by the rain's own movement and the subtle thermal currents rising from the warm earth. This still air allows the various fragrances to layer and mingle without being swept away, creating an olfactory richness that changes subtly as you breathe. As your eyes adjust further to the gentle dimness, you begin to notice the intricate details of your immediate surroundings. The trunk you're leaning against reveals its own topography, patterns of bark that create miniature canyons and ridges where water travels in predictable paths. Some sections of the bark have peeled away naturally, revealing smoother wood underneath that has been polished by weather into organic sculptures. The ground around your feet tells story through its varied textures and compositions. Here, a cluster of nuts that have fallen from somewhere high above. There, a collection of seed pods in various stages of opening and decay, each one a small monument to the forest's continuous cycle of renewal. Small stones, worn smooth by countless seasons of rain, nestle between the organic matter, some dark with moisture, others showing hints of mineral colors, rust reds, deep browns, occasional flecks of what might be quartz catching and scattering tiny points of light. Your hands, resting comfortably on your knees or on the smooth wood beside you, can feel the subtle vibrations that travel through the forest floor, the impact of larger raindrops landing on substantial surfaces, the almost imperceptible settling sounds of the living forest adjusting to the moisture, the distant impact of water cascading from higher levels in the canopy to lower ones. The soundscape in this sanctuary continues to evolve and surprise you. Beyond the immediate percussion of rain on various surfaces, you become aware of more subtle audio textures. The gentle dripping and trickling sounds create a kind of natural white noise that seems to enhance rather than mask other forest sounds. Occasionally, you hear what might be the soft movement of small creatures, perhaps a bird adjusting its position on a nearby branch, or the quiet rustle of some small forest dweller moving through the understory vegetation. There's also the sound of the forest breathing, the subtle creaking of wood fibers relaxing under the moisture, the whisper-soft sound of leaves turning slightly under the weight of accumulated water droplets, the almost inaudible hiss of rain soaking into porous surfaces. These sounds exist at the very edge of hearing, more felt than heard, contributing to the overall sense of being surrounded by life and growth and gentle, persistent change. The rain itself seems to have settled into a steady rhythm that feels sustainable and enduring, not the intensity of a storm that must exhaust itself, nor the tentative beginning drops of uncertain weather, but the confident, consistent precipitation of a system that has found its pace and settled into it comfortably. This steadiness creates a sense of timelessness, as if this gentle rain might continue indefinitely, and you might remain here in this sanctuary for as long as you choose, protected and nourished by the forest's generous embrace. Your breathing has synchronized with the forest's own rhythms, without any conscious effort on your part. Each inhalation brings in air that tastes of rain and earth and green growing things. Each exhalation releases not just breath, but any remaining tension or urgency from your body and mind. The oxygen here feels particularly rich and clean, filtered and purified by countless leaves and processed by the forest's vast respiratory system. The sanctuary's circular arrangement creates a sense of being held safely within something larger and more permanent than yourself. The massive trees that form its boundaries have stood here for decades, perhaps centuries, weathering countless storms and seasons, growing slowly but persistently toward their own vision of completeness. Their presence suggests patience on a scale that transforms your own relationship with time, inviting you to settle into the present moment with the same unhurried confidence that characterizes their growth. In this deep forest sanctuary, surrounded by the patient presence of ancient trees and serenaded by rain that falls with the consistency of a heartbeat, you find yourself entering a state of rest that feels both deeply personal and connected to something infinitely larger than yourself. The forest continues its quiet work of growth and renewal around you, and you become part of that work simply by being present, simply by allowing yourself to receive what this generous ecosystem offers so freely to anyone willing to pause and listen and breathe. The rhythm becomes everything now, this steady percussion that seems to emanate not just from above, but from within the very structure of the forest itself. Each droplet that finds its way through the layered canopy carries with it the accumulated timing of branch and leaf, creating a complex polyrhythm that shifts and breathes with an intelligence all its own. You notice how the sound changes as it moves through different densities of foliage, sharper where it strikes the broad elephant ear plants, softer where it meets the carpet of decomposing leaves, almost musical where it collects in the curved surfaces of bromeliads nestled high in the trees. Your breathing begins to sync unconsciously with this natural metronome, finding its place within the larger composition like another instrument joining an orchestra. The air itself seems to pulse with moisture, each inhalation bringing with it the rich, loamy scent of earth, drinking deeply after a long day of tropical heat. There's something almost ceremonial about this nightly ritual, this transformation of the forest from the bright cacophony of day into something more meditative, more inward turning. The temperature has dropped just enough to make the humidity feel like a warm shawl rather than a heavy blanket. Your skin responds to this shift, pores opening to receive the moisture-laden air, and you realize you're no longer simply observing this environment, but participating in its delicate exchange of breath and water, warmth and coolness. The rain's rhythm creates space between moments, stretching time in a way that makes each second feel both infinite and perfectly contained. Listen to how the raindrops find their targets with such precision. The hollow thock against a fallen log, the gentle ping against a puddle that is formed in the curved base of a giant tree root, the whispered patter against the waxy surface of a heliconia leaf. Each surface in the forest contributes its own voice to this nighttime symphony, and you begin to hear patterns within patterns, rhythms that layer and separate and rejoin like streams, finding their way down a hillside. Your awareness expands to take in the spaces between the sounds, those micro moments of silence that give shape to the rain's music. In these gaps, you can hear other subtle percussion, the occasional drip drop of water collecting and releasing from leaf tip to leaf tip. The soft plash as a small cascade finds its way from one level of the forest to another. The darkness makes these sounds more vivid somehow, your ears becoming more sensitive as your eyes adjust to the blue-black shadows that define the nighttime jungle. There's a mathematical precision to this rainfall that speaks to something deep in your nervous system, something that recognizes the familiar comfort of predictable patterns, yet within that structure, countless small variations emerge. A cluster of drops arriving more quickly as a branch overhead finally releases its accumulated load. A subtle shift in pitch as the wind changes direction and redirects the rain's angle through the canopy. This is not the mechanical repetition of a manufactured sound, but the organic rhythm of a living system expressing itself through water and gravity and time. The scent of petrichor rises from the forest floor, that distinctive aroma that emerges when rain meets earth after heat. But this jungle version carries additional notes, the green exhalation of countless plants drinking through their leaves, the rich mustiness of bark and moss, and fungal networks receiving their nightly nourishment. You breathe this complex bouquet slowly, tasting the minerals and organic compounds that the rain has gathered on its journey from cloud to leaf to earth. Your body settles deeper into this rhythmic environment, muscles releasing tension you didn't realize you were carrying as the steady pulse of rainfall provides a kind of sonic massage. The sound creates a cocoon around your awareness, not by blocking out the world, but by establishing such a consistent baseline that your mind can finally stop scanning for changes and threats. This is the sound of continuity, of a process that has repeated itself for millions of years, will continue long after you've left this place. Notice how the rain's rhythm creates a kind of temporal architecture, marking off moments without the harsh urgency of clocks or schedules. Time here moves in measures and phrases in the slow build of water, accumulating on surfaces and the gentle release as gravity claims each droplet. You find yourself existing within this natural timing, your thoughts arising and dissolving with the same unhurried pace as the water cycle, playing out all around you. The forest floor beneath you has become a complex percussion instrument, with each type of surface contributing its own timbre to the overall composition. The broad leaves create one tone, the accumulated layer of twigs and seed pods another, while the patches of exposed earth provide a deeper, more resonant bass note. Walking through this soundscape would be like moving through a living drum kit, each step adding to the music rather than disrupting it. As your attention follows the rain's journey from the highest reaches of the canopy down to the forest floor, you begin to understand the forest's vertical architecture in a new way. The rain reveals the layers, first meeting the emergent giants that tower above everything else, then filtering through the dense canopy layer where most of the forest's life congregates, next reaching the understory where smaller trees and large-leafed plants create their own microclimates, and finally arriving at the forest floor where it joins the constant process of decomposition and renewal. Each level processes the rain differently, changes its rhythm and intensity and meaning. What begins as a steady downpour becomes, by the time it reaches you, a gentler and more complex percussion, tempered and transformed by its passage through this living architecture. The forest has composed its own version of the storm, creating from the sky's simple offering something far more nuanced and varied and beautiful. The darkness amplifies every subtle variation in the rainfall's rhythm, making you aware of patterns you might miss in daylight. There's the way the intensity builds and fades in slow waves, responding to the movement of clouds you cannot see. There's the distinctive sound signature of each plant species as it channels water in its own particular way. Some leaves directing the flow to their base, others flinging droplets outward in small sprays, still others cupping the water momentarily before releasing it all at once in miniature cascades. Your pulse begins to find its place within this larger rhythm, not matching it exactly, but finding a complementary pattern like a jazz musician learning to improvise within an established groove. The rain provides the steady beat against which your breath and heartbeat can play their own more subtle variations. You become part of the forest's night music, adding your presence to the composition without needing to change anything about the way you naturally breathe and exist. The humidity carries sound differently here than in drier environments, giving each raindrop a slight echo, a small resonance that extends its presence for just a fraction of a second longer than you might expect. This creates a subtle layering effect, as if each drop is accompanied by the ghost of the drops that came before it, and the promise of those yet to fall. The air itself becomes a medium for extended percussion, holding the memory of each sound just long enough to create continuity between moments. In this rhythm-rich environment, your mind begins to let go of its habitual need to categorize and analyze every sound. Instead, you find yourself sinking into a more receptive state, allowing the rain's complex patterns to wash over and through your awareness without needing to understand or remember or hold on to any particular moment. The rhythm becomes a kind of meditation, a steady focal point that supports deeper levels of rest and release. This meditative quality of sound guides you gently forward through the night forest, your bare feet finding their way along what feels like an ancient pathway worn smooth by countless other nocturnal wanderers. The rain continues its steady conversation with the canopy above, but now you notice something else weaving through the percussion, a deeper resonance, almost felt rather than heard. It's the kind of sound that seems to rise from the earth itself, a low, continuous note that vibrates through your chest and settles into your bones. As you move deeper along this hidden trail, the quality of the rain's voice begins to shift and expand. Where before it spoke in the intimate language of leaf and branch, now it seems to be calling towards something larger, more resonant. The droplets that reach you here carry a different energy, as if they've traveled through layers of sound and space before finding your skin. Each one feels cooler, more purposeful, charged with the essence of its longer journey through the layered architecture of the forest ceiling. The path beneath your feet changes subtly, becoming softer, more yielding. What was once firm earth now gives slightly with each step, and you realize you're walking on a carpet of moss, so thick and lush it feels like the forest's own memory foam, cushioning your movement and muffling your footsteps until you move almost silently through this deeper realm. The moss seems to hold moisture like a living sponge, releasing the rich green scent of growth and patience with every gentle compression of your weight. That deeper sound grows stronger now, revealing itself slowly, like a secret being shared. It's water, you realize, but not the gentle patter you've been walking with. This is water with weight behind it, water that has gathered itself into something more substantial, more intentional. The sound draws you forward with an almost magnetic pull, promising something your body seems to remember, even if your conscious mind has never experienced it. The air grows thicker here, laden with a mist so fine it's almost imperceptible until you notice how it clings to your skin like silk, how it transforms each breath into something richer and more nourishing. This isn't the sharp clarity of rain-washed air, but something deeper and more complex. Air that has been churned and oxygenated, sweetened by its dance with falling water and ancient stone. Your hands reach out instinctively as the path narrows, and your fingertips encounter the rough bark of trees that feel older and more substantial than those you passed earlier. These giants seem to lean inward, creating a natural corridor that guides you toward that increasingly compelling sound. Their bark is slick with moisture, not just from the rain above, but from something more fundamental, as if these trees exist in a perpetual state of hydration. Their very cells, saturated with the abundance of this hidden place. The sound of falling water grows more distinct now, separating itself from the rain's steady rhythm to become something entirely its own. It's a sound with layers, the sharp impact of water meeting stone, the softer splash of depth, the continuous whisper of mist, rising and settling. Your ears begin to distinguish between these different voices of water, each one telling you something about the hidden geography ahead. As you round a gentle bend in the path, the forest opens into a natural amphitheater, and suddenly you understand where that magnetic sound has been calling you. Before you, illuminated by the subtle luminescence of the night sky, stands a waterfall that seems to have been waiting in this secret place since the beginning of time. It's not a dramatic cascade, but something more intimate, more personal. Perhaps 20 feet of water spilling over a moss-covered ledge into a pool that reflects the dim starlight like polished obsidian. The water appears almost silver in the filtered light, creating its own gentle glow as it falls. Each drop seems to catch and hold whatever light exists in this sheltered space, so that the entire waterfall shimmers with an internal radiance that has nothing to do with the sun or moon. This is water celebrating its own nature, delighting in the simple physics of falling and flowing, creating beauty from the basic elements of gravity and stone. You approach the edge of the pool, and the mist from the waterfall greets your face, like a cool benediction. This is moisture with intention, droplets so fine they seem to dissolve into your skin rather than simply settling on its surface. Each breath you take here feels like drinking from the source of something pure and essential, filling your lungs with air that has been perfectly conditioned by its journey through falling water. The pool itself is larger than it first appeared, extending back under the overhanging rock in gentle curves that suggest years of patient erosion. The water is so clear and still in the areas away from the waterfall's impact that it creates perfect mirror images of the surrounding vegetation, doubling the beauty of this hidden sanctuary and making it feel like a place that exists both in the physical world and in some realm of pure reflection. You settle yourself on a smooth boulder at the pool's edge, a stone so perfectly positioned it might have been placed there by some ancient architect of comfort. The rock is cool against your skin, but quickly warms to your body temperature, as if it too is eager to be part of this communion between human consciousness and the eternal patience of water. From this vantage point, you can see how the waterfall has carved itself into the landscape over countless seasons, wearing away the stone grain by grain until it created this perfect vessel for its own expression. The sound here is completely immersive, surrounding you with layers of aquatic music that seem to have no beginning or end. There's the primary percussion where the main flow strikes the pool, creating a steady, comforting bass note that you feel in your chest as much as hear with your ears. Above that, the lighter patterns where smaller streams separate from the main flow and find their own paths down the rock face, each one adding its own delicate voice to the composition. But perhaps most beautiful of all is the sound of the mist itself, the almost inaudible whisper of countless tiny droplets being born from the waterfall's impact and then settling back into the pool like a gentle rain that falls upward before surrendering again to gravity. This creates a continuous, soft susurration, a sound like the forest itself breathing, that fills the spaces between the more obvious percussion of falling water. The rain that brought you here continues its own conversation with the trees surrounding this hidden amphitheater, but now it feels like accompaniment rather than the main melody. The waterfall has claimed the primary voice in this place, and the rain seems content to provide texture and harmony, adding its droplets to the pool and keeping the moss and ferns that line the waterfall's edges in their perfect state of verdant saturation. As you sit in this sanctuary of sound and mist, your body begins to synchronize with the waterfall's rhythm. Your breathing naturally slows and deepens, finding a pace that matches the eternal patience of falling water. Your heartbeat seems to settle into harmony with the steady pulse of water meeting stone, as if your entire circulatory system is learning from this master class in flow and persistence. The cool mist continues to caress your face and arms, each tiny droplet carrying with it the essence of the journey it has taken, from cloud to rain to stream, to this moment of transformation into mist and back to stillness. You become aware that you are participating in the water cycle itself, that every breath you take in this place connects you to the endless circulation of moisture that keeps the forest alive and thriving. Your skin begins to glisten with a fine coating of this sacred mist, and you notice how it seems to wash away not just the heat and fatigue of your journey, but something deeper, the accumulated tension and worry that consciousness carries like invisible dust. Here, in the presence of water that has been falling and flowing long before human memory and will continue long after, perspective shifts naturally toward the eternal rather than the immediate. The temperature in this grotto feels perfectly calibrated by the waterfall's natural air conditioning system. The mist creates its own microclimate, cooler than the surrounding forest, but not cold, humid, but not oppressive. It's as if the waterfall has spent centuries learning exactly how to create the most comfortable environment possible, adjusting the density of its mist and the volume of its flow to achieve this perfect balance between refreshment and comfort. Looking up, you can see how the waterfall emerges from a cleft in the rock face above, where some ancient stream has found its way through the forest floor and chosen this spot to make its dramatic entrance into the lower world. The rock around the source is carpeted with moss, so thick and vibrant it seems to glow with its own green light, creating a living frame for the water's emergence. Tiny ferns have found footholds in the crevices, their delicate fronds creating lace-like patterns against the dark stone. The pool itself reveals more secrets as your eyes adjust to the subtle light. Small fish move like liquid shadows in the deeper areas, their presence revealed more by the gentle ripples they create than by direct sight. They seem utterly at peace with your presence, these ancient residents of this hidden place, continuing their nocturnal activities with the confidence of creatures who know they are safe in this sanctuary. Around the pool's perimeter, the forest has created a natural gallery of living art. Every plant here seems to exist in a state of perfect health and vitality, nourished by the constant supply of moisture and the negative ions created by the falling water. The leaves are larger, more lustrous, deeper green than those you passed on your journey here. Flowers that would be modest in other settings have grown bold and generous in this perfect environment, their petals thick and waxy, designed to make the most of this abundance of moisture and filtered light. This sanctuary beside the waterfall reveals its deepest secrets as you settle more comfortably into its embrace. The air here carries a different quality than anywhere else in your nocturnal journey through the jungle. It's saturated, not just with moisture, but with a kind of primordial energy that seems to pulse gently through your lungs with each breath. You can taste the minerals from deep within the earth, carried up through underground streams and released into the atmosphere by the constant churning of water against ancient stone. There's something almost medicinal about breathing here, as if the very act of inhaling is washing your respiratory system clean from the inside. The waterfall's roar has become so familiar now that it forms a kind of auditory backdrop against which smaller, more delicate sounds begin to emerge with startling clarity. You hear the gentle plinking of individual droplets landing on broad leaves at different pitches, creating an impromptu percussion section that changes its rhythm as the breeze shifts the foliage. Somewhere in the canopy above, a nightbird calls with a liquid trill that seems designed specifically to complement the water's endless song. The sound echoes off the rock face behind the falls, returning to your ears a fraction of a second later, slightly softer and more mysterious. As your eyes continue to adjust to this interplay of darkness and reflected moonlight, you begin to notice something extraordinary happening in the air around you. The mist from the waterfall, illuminated by those silver beams, filtering down through gaps in the jungle canopy, is creating visible columns of light that shift and dance like vertical rivers of luminescence. These pillars of illuminated vapor move with the gentlest air currents, bending and swaying in slow motion, sometimes separating into wispy tendrils that curl around tree trunks before rejoining the main flow of mist. The effect is mesmerizing in its subtlety. Unlike the harsh artificial lights of the modern world, this natural illumination seems to caress rather than penetrate. It reveals without exposing, highlights without glaring. When one of these columns of moonlit mist drifts close to where you're resting, you can feel its coolness against your skin, not cold, but refreshingly temperate, like stepping into a naturally air-conditioned space on a warm summer evening. The mist carries with it the pure, clean scent of water that has traveled through layers of rock and earth, emerging here cleansed of everything but the essential minerals that give it its crisp, almost effervescent character. You extend a hand into one of these drifting columns of light and mist and watch as your fingers seem to glow with borrowed moonbeams. The water droplets are so fine they feel more like cool breath against your palm than actual moisture. Yet when you draw your hand back, you can see the faintest sheen of water beating on your skin. The sensation is so gentle it's almost imaginary, yet undeniably real, like being touched by the softest possible version of rain. This interplay between light and water creates an ever-changing gallery around you. Shadows shift and merge as the mist patterns change, causing certain plants to emerge from darkness, only to fade back into mystery moments later. A massive philodendron with leaves as large as dinner plates suddenly becomes visible as a column of moonlit vapor drifts past it, illuminating the intricate venation of its foliage like a living stained glass window. The light catches the water droplets clinging to its surface, transforming each one into a tiny lens that fractures the moonbeam into miniature rainbows, too small and fleeting to focus on directly, yet unmistakably there. The rock face behind the waterfall reveals itself in sections as these moving columns of light play across its surface. You can see the work of millennia written in stone, layers of different minerals creating horizontal bands of varying color and texture, worn smooth in some places by the constant spray, while other areas maintain their rough, natural texture where the water's reach doesn't extend. Tiny ferns have established themselves in crevices where just enough soil has accumulated over the centuries, creating small vertical gardens that thrive in this environment of constant, gentle moisture. There's something profoundly peaceful about watching this slow dance of light and shadow, mist and stone. Your breathing naturally synchronizes with the gentle rhythms you're observing. The slow drift of the vapor columns, the gradual shift of shadows, the periodic intensification and softening of the moonlight as high clouds move across the lunar surface, far above the jungle canopy. Time seems to move differently here, measured not in minutes or hours, but in the subtle cycles of natural phenomena that follow their own ancient patterns. The temperature in this grotto remains remarkably stable, moderated by the constant evaporation and condensation cycle created by the waterfall, while the jungle around you experiences the natural cooling that comes with deep night. Here the air maintains a gentle warmth that speaks of thermal springs or underground heat sources contributing to the waterfall's flow. Your skin feels neither warm nor cool, but perfectly balanced, as if you've found that precise temperature zone where the boundary between your body and the surrounding air becomes almost imperceptible. This thermal equilibrium extends to the surfaces around you. The rocks you're resting against hold just enough warmth to be comfortable without being hot. The moss and soft vegetation provide natural cushioning that seems designed by centuries of evolution to accommodate creatures seeking rest in this sanctuary. Each exhalation carries away not just carbon dioxide, but seemingly some of the accumulated tensions and pollutants of civilized life, while each inhalation brings not just oxygen, but the essential vitality that can only be found in places where nature operates according to its own perfect principles, undisturbed by human intervention or artificial modification. This rhythmic exchange between your body and the jungle's atmosphere creates a profound harmony that extends beyond mere respiration. It becomes a form of communion with the forest itself. You can feel your heartbeat beginning to synchronize with the deeper pulses of the rain, the slower cadences that emerge when you listen, not to individual droplets, but to the vast orchestration of water meeting earth across miles of canopy. Your pulse seems to find its place within this grander rhythm, like a single instrument joining an ancient symphony that has been playing since the first rains fell upon the first forests. The night sounds around you are shifting now, settling into what you recognize as nature's own lullaby. Not the harsh mechanical hums of civilization, but the organic melodies that have soothed countless generations of forest dwellers. Somewhere in the middle distance, a night bird calls with liquid notes that seem to pour like honey through the darkness. Its song is answered by another, farther away, and then another, creating a gentle conversation that weaves between the tree trunks and mingles with the percussion of the rain. You become aware of the subtle rustling of small creatures moving through the undergrowth, not the frantic scurrying of urban wildlife startled by human presence, but the unhurried movements of animals perfectly at home in their domain. The soft whisper of leaves brushing against fur, the delicate crack of a twig under a careful paw, the barely audible flutter of wings settling onto a branch. Each sound adds another layer to the forest's nocturnal song. A gentle breeze moves through the canopy high above, and you can hear it approaching from a great distance. First, as the faintest whisper among the uppermost leaves, then growing slowly stronger as it travels through the layered branches, creating a wave of sound that passes overhead like a vast, invisible river flowing through the sky. This aerial current brings with it new fragrances. The green scent of leaves washed clean by rain, the rich earthiness of moss-covered stones, and something floral and sweet from night-blooming plants that open their petals only in darkness. The combination of these scents creates an olfactory meditation, each breath bringing a slightly different blend as the air currents shift and swirl. You find yourself breathing more slowly, more deliberately, wanting to fully experience each nuanced inhalation. The forest seems to encourage this deepened breathing as if the very air has been perfectly formulated to promote relaxation and inner stillness. Your body continues to release tension in waves, each exhale carrying away another layer of the accumulated stress from your daily life. The warm, humid air seems to work like a gentle massage on your respiratory system, loosening and softening everything from your shoulders to your diaphragm. You can feel your ribcage expanding more fully with each breath, your lungs taking in deeper drafts of the oxygen-rich forest air. As you settle more completely into this environment, you become aware of the forest floor beneath you. Not uncomfortable, but perfectly supportive, as if the earth itself has arranged itself for your comfort. The ground here is thick with decades of fallen leaves, creating a natural cushion that conforms to your body while remaining firm enough to provide stable support. You can feel the slight springiness of this organic mattress, built layer by layer through countless seasons of growth and renewal. The temperature of this forest bed seems to adjust to your body's needs, neither too warm nor too cool, but maintaining that perfect balance that allows complete relaxation. Small insects move through the leaf litter around you, their tiny movements creating the gentlest of vibrations that somehow add to, rather than disturb, your sense of peace. These creatures go about their nighttime activities with no concern for your presence, accepting you as simply another part of the forest's natural order. Above you, the canopy creates a living ceiling that shifts and moves in the breeze, occasionally allowing glimpses of the night sky through gaps in the foliage. When the wind stills, you can see fragments of stars twinkling like scattered diamonds against the deep velvet of the tropical night. These celestial points of light seem to pulse gently, as if breathing along with the forest itself. The rain continues its varied performance, sometimes intensifying to a fuller chorus, other times softening to barely more than a whisper. During one of these quieter interludes, you become aware of another element in nature's lullaby, the gentle dripping of collected rainwater from leaves and branches. Each drop that has gathered enough moisture falls with its own distinctive note, creating a random but somehow perfectly orchestrated percussion that complements the broader sounds of the rainfall. Some drops fall onto other leaves with a soft pat. Others land on the forest floor with a tiny thump. And still others find their way into small pools of collected rainwater, creating delicate plinking sounds that ring briefly before being absorbed into the ambient soundscape. This natural water music has no artificial pattern or imposed rhythm. Instead, it follows the organic logic of gravity and surface tension, creating melodies that could never be composed or replicated, only experienced in this moment, in this place. Your awareness expands to encompass more of the forest around you, and you begin to sense the vast network of life that surrounds you on all sides. Trees of enormous age and size create pillars that support this green cathedral, their trunks disappearing upward into the darkness. You can almost feel their slow, steady growth, their patient accumulation of years and seasons, their deep roots drawing sustenance from the rich soil, while their crowns reach toward whatever light filters down from above. Vines and epiphytes drape these ancient trees, creating curtains of green that filter and soften every sound. Orchids and bromeliads nestle in the crooks of branches, their exotic blooms invisible in the darkness, but their presence somehow palpable in the richness of the night air. The entire forest seems to breathe as one organism, inhaling the night and exhaling a profound sense of timeless serenity. Your own breathing is now synchronized completely with this larger rhythm, and you find that each breath comes without effort or conscious control. The forest air seems to flow into your lungs of its own accord, carrying with it not just oxygen, but something more subtle, a quality of peace that penetrates beyond your physical body and touches something deeper within you. The sounds around you continue to weave their natural lullaby, but gradually you notice that your perception of them is changing. Rather than hearing each sound separately, you begin to experience them as part of a unified whole, a single song of the forest night that encompasses everything from the rain overhead to the smallest movements in the leaf litter. This auditory meditation draws you deeper into a state of profound relaxation, where the boundaries between yourself and the surrounding forest seem to become increasingly transparent. Your muscles continue to release their grip on accumulated tension, each group of fibers letting go in its own time and its own way. The warm, humid air works its way into every tight spot, every knot of stress, gently encouraging release and softening. You can feel this relaxation spreading through your body like warm honey, slow and thorough and completely natural. The forest's lullaby continues around you, an endless song that has been playing for countless centuries and will continue long after this night has passed. But for now, in this moment, it plays especially for you, welcoming you into its ancient embrace and inviting you to rest completely within its protective boundaries. Surrounded by the eternal music of rain and leaves, wind and water, and the gentle breathing of the living jungle night, this ancient rhythm carries you deeper still, becoming part of your own breathing as the hours drift by, like gentle clouds across a midnight sky. The rain continues its patient work, each drop a small blessing upon the leaves, and you find yourself sinking further into this natural sanctuary where time moves with the unhurried pace of growing things. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, something begins to shift in the quality of the darkness around you. It's subtle at first, like the faintest suggestion of change whispered through the canopy above. The rain maintains its steady presence, but there's a new softness creeping into the edges of the night, a barely noticeable lightning that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. the first hint of dawn arrives not as light, but as a change in the forest's breathing. Somewhere high above, beyond the layered ceiling of leaves and branches, the eastern horizon must be catching the earliest whispers of morning, though here in your sheltered hollow, the transformation comes as the gentlest possible awakening of the world around you. You remain perfectly still, cradled in your mossy refuge, as this subtle metamorphosis begins to unfold. The rain continues falling, but now each droplet seems to carry within it the promise of light, though that light remains hours away from reaching you through the dense tropical canopy. It's as if the very air is slowly remembering what dawn means, preparing itself with infinite patience for the day that will eventually come. The sounds around you begin their own quiet transformation. While the rain's percussion remains constant, you start to notice the faintest stirrings of early morning life beginning to weave itself into the symphony. A distant bird call, so soft it might be imagination, threads itself through the sound of falling water. It's answered by another, then another, creating the most delicate counterpoint to the rain's steady rhythm. These aren't the bold declarations of full daylight birds, but rather the tentative, sleepy conversations of creatures who are themselves just beginning to sense that the world is slowly turning toward morning. Their voices blend seamlessly with the ongoing rainfall, creating layers upon layers of natural music that seems to emanate from the very soul of the forest. You feel yourself becoming part of this gradual awakening, though your own body remains deeply relaxed, sinking further into the soft embrace of moss and earth. The approaching dawn touches something deep within you, a recognition of cycles older than memory, of the eternal rhythm of darkness flowing into light and back into darkness again. But this recognition comes without urgency, without any need to move or change or do anything other than simply be present for this slow miracle of transition. The temperature around you shifts almost imperceptibly, the night's coolness beginning its unhurried retreat. The change is so gradual that you feel it more as a memory than a sensation, as if your body is remembering what warmth feels like while still being perfectly comfortable in the gentle coolness that surrounds you. The rain continues to provide its own temperature, each drop carrying the coolness of the high canopy where it began its journey downward. Above you, though you cannot see it, the complex architecture of the jungle canopy is beginning its own response to the approaching light. Leaves that have spent the night drinking in the rainfall are preparing to transform that water into the day's growth. Though this process happens so slowly, so naturally, that it creates no disturbance in the profound peace that surrounds you. You become aware of the air itself changing, taking on that particular quality that comes in the hour before dawn. Not quite night anymore, but not yet morning. It's as if the atmosphere is holding its breath, waiting with infinite patience for the sun to begin its work of filtering down through countless layers of green. The humidity that surrounds you feels different now, softer somehow, as if the approaching light is already beginning to transform even the molecules of moisture that dance around you. the fragrance of the night forest begins to shift as well, though so subtly that you notice it more as a feeling than a scent. The rich earthiness remains, but now it's joined by something that might be the smell of possibilities, of growth waiting to unfold, of 1,000 different plants preparing for another day of quiet photosynthesis once the sun finally makes its way down to them. Your own breathing has synchronized so completely with this rhythm of gradual transformation that you're no longer sure where your exhales end and the forest's sighs begin. Each breath carries with it the promise of dawn, while honoring the peace of the night that still holds you. You're suspended in this perfect moment between darkness and light, completely supported by the earth beneath you and the gentle rain above. The bird songs are becoming slightly more frequent now, though they remain soft and contemplative, like whispered conversations between old friends who have just awakened. These voices add a new dimension to the soundscape without disturbing its essential character. They seem to understand that this is a time for gentle acknowledgement, not celebration, a time for gradual awakening rather than sudden alertness. You find yourself thinking, in the dreamy way that comes at the edge of sleep, about all the countless dawns this forest has witnessed. How many thousands of mornings has it greeted with this same patient grace, this same unhurried preparation? The rain that falls on you now has participated in this ritual before, cycling through the eternal dance of evaporation and precipitation, always returning to bless the jungle with its presence. There's something infinitely comforting about being part of this ancient pattern, about allowing yourself to rest within a process that has been perfected over millions of years. The approaching dawn asks nothing of you except your presence, your willingness to exist peacefully within this moment of transition. You don't need to greet the morning actively or prepare for the day ahead. You need only to remain here, breathing quietly, feeling the subtle shifts that mark the turning of the world. The quality of the rainfall seems to be changing too, becoming somehow more purposeful, as if the water itself knows that it's participating in the daily renewal of life. Each drop that touches a leaf, each rivulet that finds its way down a branch, each small stream that carves its path through the forest floor, all of it feels connected to the approaching light, preparing the jungle for another day of quiet growth and patient existence. Your body has found the perfect temperature now, warmed by your own circulation and cooled by the gentle moisture in the air. The moss beneath you has molded itself to your form so completely that you feel held rather than merely supported, embraced by the living earth in a way that speaks to something deep in your cellular memory, some ancient knowledge of what it means to be perfectly at home in the natural world. The approaching dawn brings with it no sense of urgency or demand for attention. Instead, it offers the deep peace that comes from witnessing a miracle that happens so regularly, so reliably, that it has become the very definition of constancy. The sun will rise, as it has risen every day for billions of years, but its light will take its time reaching you here in this protected hollow, filtered through layer upon layer of leaves until it arrives as the gentlest possible illumination. this knowledge settles over you like another layer of comfort, the understanding that you are perfectly positioned to experience dawn, not as an event, but as a process, not as a moment, but as an unfolding that will take hours to complete. The rain continues its patient work around you, and you continue your own patient work of simply being present, simply allowing this perfect peace to deepen with each breath, each heartbeat, each gentle drop that falls from the awakening canopy above. In this space between night and morning, held by rain and earth and the quiet breathing of the forest, you find yourself drifting even deeper into rest, carried by the certain knowledge that the world is exactly as it should be, and you are exactly where you belong. This deep rest carries you forward through time that moves like honey, unmeasured and unhurried, until something shifts in the quality of the darkness around your closed eyes. Not brightness exactly, but a softening of the shadows, as if someone has begun to breathe warmth into the cool night air. The rain continues its gentle conversation with the leaves, but now there's a new voice joining the chorus, the barely audible whisper of dawn beginning to stir somewhere beyond the canopy. Your body remains perfectly still, perfectly comfortable in its nest of soft earth and supportive roots. But your awareness begins to float upward slightly, like a balloon filled with the lightest possible air. Through your eyelids, you sense, rather than see, the first tentative fingers of light beginning to probe the layers of jungle above you. The darkness doesn't retreat so much as it begins to reveal hidden depths, subtle variations in shade and shadow that speak of a world preparing to transform itself once again. The raindrops that have been your companions through this long, peaceful night now catch tiny sparks of this approaching light. Each one that falls past your resting place carries within it a miniature prism, breaking the early dawn into fragments of rose and amber and the softest gold. You don't need to open your eyes to know this is happening. Somehow you can feel the light through your skin, through the pores that have been drinking in the humid jungle air for hours. A bird calls somewhere high above you, its voice like liquid music poured slowly from a crystal vessel. The sound echoes briefly through the cathedral spaces between the trees before being absorbed by the patient leaves and the gentle rainfall. Then another voice answers from a different direction, and another, until the forest begins to weave itself a morning song that rises and falls with the rhythm of your own slow breathing. The temperature of the air begins its subtle shift, still warm, still embracing, but now touched with the promise of sun-warmed earth and flowers opening their faces to receive the light. You can smell this change happening, the green scents deepening, the rich earth beneath you, exhaling the sweetness it has gathered through the night. The rain itself taking on new fragrances as it mingles with awakening blossoms somewhere in the canopy above. Your heartbeat continues its steady, peaceful rhythm, perfectly synchronized with the dripping of water from leaf to leaf. Each pulse sends waves of calm contentment through your muscles, your bones, the spaces between your thoughts. There is no urgency in this awakening, no sense that anything needs to be different from exactly how it is in this moment. The light continues its gentle approach, patient as the rain itself. Through the layered canopy of leaves and branches, it filters down in soft beams that turn the falling droplets into tiny stars. Each ray that finds its way through the green maze above carries with it the warmth of possibility, the promise that this perfect peace you've discovered can be carried with you wherever you go. You begin to sense movement in the forest around you, not the urgent scurrying of daylight activity, but the slow, dreamy stirring of a world that has also spent the night in deep rest. Somewhere nearby, a leaf unfurls itself to catch more of the rain. A small creature shifts position on a branch, settling back into comfortable sleep. The very trees seem to stretch themselves slightly, extending their branches a fraction further into the warm, moist air. The rain continues, but now it's joined by the gentle sounds of water, moving through the forest in tiny streams, following paths worn by countless other nights of gentle rainfall. The musical tinkling of water over stones, the soft gurgle as it pools briefly in the hollow of a fallen log, the whispered splash as it joins larger streams that wind their way deeper into the jungle's heart. Your breathing has become so naturally rhythmic that you barely notice it anymore. Just the gentle rise and fall of your chest, the cool air flowing in, the warm air flowing out, mixing with the humid sweetness that surrounds you. Each breath brings with it more of the forest's peace, more of its ancient wisdom about the beauty of simply being present, simply allowing each moment to unfold exactly as it needs to. The light grows stronger now, though still filtered and gentle through the many layers of leaves. And so, the story gently fades, like stars at dawn. Sleep well, dear